Welcome back, bike farmers. Another bike that was brought in by a customer said they just needed a chain. And this chain is very crunchy, so they are not wrong. I hear that periodically. I just need a chain, or I need my chain tightened. Those sorts of things. And the reality is if your chain is in this bad of shape, then many other parts on the bike are also in bad shape and rusty and so on and so forth. So it's always a good idea for me to point those things out and sell them a tune-up. Although I'm not really selling them on anything, I'm just pointing out that we can do a whole lot more for this bike if we kind of clean, lubricate, and adjust everything. And then you have a brand new bike. But also, I think it was left outside, which is how it got in this condition because the saddle's roached. So tucked her into a new saddle, and she wanted a kickstand put on it. So this one's getting a new chain, new saddle, new kickstand, and a tune-up. And so that's what we're gonna do today. I put air in the tires when I checked in the bike, and they're still holding air, so that's fine. There's rust, but I don't think it's anything that a little bit of lube and maybe a little bit of steel wool will take care of. I'm a big fan of the basic tune-up. I don't think we need to go all out on every bike. Certain bikes, yeah, if there's some value there, or if it's for an enthusiast level cyclist, then it makes sense to kind of go full bore and replace cables and housing and that kind of thing, just so it's really dialed in all the time. For most casual riders, cleaning and lube and adjustment is really good enough, and I just believe in that. Like, we don't need to be charging people what we don't need to charge them for and selling them too much and that sort of thing. So I try to be practical and fair and also do what's right for the machine and for the customer, and that's what we're going to do in this part, or in this bike. Thanks for tuning in, and stay with me. We'll go through the whole bike and show you a little bit of everything with this one. First things first, best way to remove a chain with a bolt cutter. Done. And then, per the usual, as we say, this front wheel was not put on properly. I think in most cases, quick releases are a bad idea on bicycles. Nobody really knows how to do it. That's the problem with them. For those of us that do, they're great. But we are few and far between. People get insulted when you suggest that they might not know, you know, and say, are you familiar with quick release? And they're like, oh yeah. But they're not. I'm just putting some lube on the brake pivots, but I should probably just spray everything down. I'm gonna pull this saddle off right away too. Just kind of get this thing stripped down to the bare necessities, and then maybe I'll go through and clean everything quick. There's a blurry line between cleaning and lubing. That's where one step is nice, this stuff, because it's a cleaner and lubricant. It's very thin, so it really works its way in. And I'm just kind of spray it on things and then move it manually. I don't care about getting it everywhere. Spraying it in the pivots here, in behind. Just gonna spray it on the bottle screws, in the crank, pedal spindles, front brakes. All right, get it up in the shifters, in the shifter pods. Just flood those. Back behind the levers, the top of the levers. That'll make them shiny again. Just let it sit. All the bolts and everything here, and the stem. just kind of everywhere. Make a mess. Why not? It's fun. Okay, then I'm going to take a semi-clean rag and start kind of wiping things down. Yeah, this was out in a sunny spot, I can tell. It's got some UV damage. UV is very powerful stuff. It really does a number on the finish. Ooh, one thing to check when you know a bike's been outside in the cold northern climates is check the chain stays and look for cracks, because they'll fill full of water and then freeze, and when that water expands and contracts, but when it expands mostly, the tube, it'll pop it, it'll actually break, and then the frame is shot. It's still rideable, but you know, it's shot. You can't fix it. Okay. If you push your rear derailleur in, you can loosen your housing all the way up, this whole thing. So we're gonna just assume that there's corrosion all along the way here and get a nice coat of tri-flow on everything. I'm gonna find a little piece of steel wool. Okay, so I always have some steel wool laying around on the bench. I don't know if it's triple aught or double aught or what. It's not quite the super ultra fine steel wool, but if you kind of do one of those numbers, it really cleans the cable. These aren't the hardest cables to replace, but like I said, if they're not fraying and broken, they don't need to be replaced, so it's not worth all the effort. They're pretty clean inside the housing, actually. Most of the rust is out in the open. And I just kind of work as much lube as I can in the whole system. This doesn't feel great, I'm telling you right now. But this is an 8-speed bike, I think. We have a lot of room for error with this particular. I think we're going to get it to index just fine. This derailleur has a nice strong spring. The shifter is working well now that we sprayed it. You know, that feels really good. I get a lot of comments about, you know, skipping steps or counting corners or cutting corners, or you know, oh, you do all that, but you don't do that kind of thing. And, you know, I hear your point, but good enough is good enough. You know, I'm making significant improvements to all of these bikes. And not all of them need the deluxe treatment. They're just not necessarily worth it. And for what purpose this is serving, just getting it all working good again. And honestly, this tune-up with all this lube, and it's gonna hold. Even if it is parked outside for a while, this bike's gonna be great when we're done. It's gonna be great for a while afterwards. So I'm doing the front derailleur cable now. I got some lube on my fingers. I'm just rubbing it into the frame, because we can buff all that out later with a clean rag. Guy that worked for me used to just take a dirty rag and use that as a bike polish. You know, take a rag like this and just rub it on the frame, rub it right into the paint. You know, and it really shines them up good. You can take a clean rag at the end and wipe the residue off, and it's just like a wax. Yeah, it's already looking 10, 20 times better. We'll do the rear brake cable here while we're at it. Clean, lube, and adjust. I never really thought about it, but that's what it boils down to. Okay, might as well do the front while we're at it. A lot of times I wait. You're in frame, yeah, good. Good job, Andy. Yeah, my name's Andy, by the way. My name isn't Bike Farmer. My parents named me Andy. I wish they would have named me Bike Farmer. It'd be a lot cooler if they did. So I just kind of filled this whole thing here with tri-flow and then kind of hold it steady and work the lever, and that made all the difference in the world with that front brake. And now it's going to sit for a little bit while I do other things with the bike, and that even helps more. Yeah, all that one step we squirted. It's been sitting on here and really waking things back up on this bike. This is a really good reanimation. You're reanimating all of the systems on this bike, waking it back up after a long period of dormancy, hibernation, the Wisconsin winters. I had the feeling that this might be a bike used for transportation, you know, like a commuter bike, not just a casual deal. She said she had won it in a raffle of some sort. So real, not a cyclist. Definitely not a cyclist. You know, just a regular person with a good bike. Filthy bench. We're gonna get after these wheels a bit. That was Dawn Power Wash, by the way. Does a good job of degreasing. This bike doesn't need a whole lot of degreasing because it's been outside and it's mostly just dried out and rusty and that sort of thing. But the Dawn Power Wash does a good job of cleaning and polishing too. Cleaning in between each spoke nipple on the rims. Just kind of go around like this, give it a couple spins. Polishing. This hub's a little loose. I think I'm going to tighten that with the cheater method. Rear hubs can be a little more involved to adjust properly, especially the free hub ones. So I always check to see how it's loose before using the cheater method. And if the lock nuts appear to be holding and it just kind of loosened up somehow, then I use the cheater method. If one of the lock nuts is loose, then I make the proper corrections and make sure it doesn't happen again. And truing a wheel with a loose hub is kind of a fool's errand. So one way to check it is if you grab one lock nut and then grab the other one with your hand. And so I'm not able to loosen them by hand. Okay, and there's that. Take a 17 mil on that side, and then I take my adjustable on the other side. And now I'm gonna loosen just a little bit. I'm not actually loosening, I'm just going lefty. And nothing's loosening up. So my lock nuts are holding. So now the cheater method is just to grab both of these and tighten down just a little bit. And yeah, so like a 1/16 of a turn. I mean, I just barely tighten that at all. And it's pretty good. Another thing I'm gonna do, instead of taking this all apart, I know there's people out there that are like, why don't you overhaul that hub and take it all apart and grease it? I'm gonna take some fill oil and squirt it down in there. Help things along a little bit. I can just feel that it's just dry in there and it's kind of crunchy. It's just the way it is. I mean, once we start tackling every single little aspect of this bike, we're far exceeding its value. So this just provides a little bit of protection against things getting a whole lot worse. But we could take it all apart, replace the bearings, put new grease in there, adjust it, and it's still gonna feel a little crunchy and not be great. Yeah, you can like really hear this hub. Not real great. Also not worth making great. So, as we say, good enough for who it's for. If you want the best, you're gonna have to buy it. front hub's got a little bit of a wobble to it too. Kind of hard to true it. So, grab my wrenches again and do the same thing. Just give it a little bit of a snug. Not much. You want it a little loose because your quick release skewer compresses the bearings, and that's like the final tuning of the preload on that bearing system. Far more important than older race wheels and that sort of thing. Adjusting hubs was a major part of tune-ups back in the day, I think, or a big part of it. It's less important now. A lot of them are sealed. And the ones that aren't sealed kind of fall into that right in the middle category. And get it pretty good. Pretty good. So what's nice about having everything lubed and cleaned at this point is you can just kind of put things back together and start adjusting. You don't have to do a whole lot of futzing around as you go. So I spun it. I'm holding the cassette in place, the freewheel in place, just because I don't have a chain on it. And I'm just kind of lubing that. Then yeah, you can hear that hub. Yeah, it's a little loose in spots. But if I tighten it anymore, it's just going to get so much worse. So you can kind of tighten the skewer. And again, you tighten the skewer and it compresses the whole bearing system and it'll tighten the hub. Yeah, it's really crunchy. You know, it's not worth putting a new wheel on. It's not worth overhauling that hub. Yeah, I think the best call is just to leave it. You know, if this was a bike I was reselling, that would be a tougher call. But knowing this customer and knowing that this bike will probably sit outside more, it's fine, it's working. Okay, so we got that brake hooked up and it's actually adjusted pretty well. I'm gonna make a slight spring adjustment. It's not even worth showing you. It's like a 1/16 of an inch turn. There's nothing. I'm gonna get a chain and a saddle. So this is just a nice mid-grade, comfortable, somewhat sporty, somewhat comfortable Giant Comfort Connect saddle. And I'm eyeballing the angle on it right now. I think that's better. I want to make sure these seat clamps are really tight. And it's always a good thing to check on your own bike. Most of the time it's a 6mm on these basic mid-90s kind of deals, 2000s bikes. But sometimes you have a pair of 5mm bolts underneath there. All right, I got my chain. I guess I could zoom in on the chain install. Let's do that. So I'm using a quick link, and this will help me break the chain. This will help me set the quick link, possibly. And the chain I hung on the handlebars. It's right here. So I always start in little and little. Okay. It's the way I do it. There's other ways to do it. I know. If you got a better way, let me know. So I do that, and I bend my derailleur down, fish it through, run the bottom pulley wheel. Okay, and we're in the little here and the little here. Then I hold this side, hold the front side, and then I kind of eyeball where it's lining up, and maybe Nope. So one of these outer links is what the quick link will replace. So this one is still too long. You want the derailleur to just start, you know, pulling. So I'm gonna go back one more, and if I line those two holes up, that looks pretty good. You know, you get a nice parallel line between the top and the bottom. So holding that link in place with my fingers, I know which one to pound the pin through. So here I go with the pin. Okay, break my chain. And I'll set this aside. I don't know, I should probably throw them away. I got so many of them now, but I could link them all together and make a free chain. If you have 5 links, if you ever remove them and you have 5 links, you can make a star shape out of that, and it makes a nice Christmas ornament. Or some very heavy earrings, if you're into that. Okay, so quick link goes in. There, I didn't need the tool. It's good enough. I'm guessing everything's going to shift wonderfully. I'm going to put the chain in the middle chain ring, and then I'm looking, so when I'm in the small back here and the chain's in the middle chain ring, seeing if the chain is rubbing on the inside of the outer cage, and it is a little bit. I can tell this front derailleur is just a little bit not, I don't know what you call it. The angle isn't just quite right. And I think if I straighten it out just a little bit, it's going to make my life a lot easier. Maybe a degree, maybe 2. And I just created a little bit of a gap there. So then I'm going all the way up to the top back here. Okay, so the cable, oh that's right, I turned this barrel adjuster in. So the cable's super loose. But if I'm in the big cog, then I'm rubbing inside here now. I'm gonna try to loosen the cable with the barrel adjuster on the lever, and I don't think it was enough. Okay, and I can tell that the lower limit is off now in the front. So just that down. I think I gotta let a little bit of cable out too. All right, so we're gonna tighten this cable. To do so, grab it with a pliers, loosen my anchor, pulling really tight, and then tightening the bolt down. And I'm pulling really tight because I can see right here that I have a little bit of adjustment with my barrel adjuster. I can always loosen it. Okay, so things are kind of grunchy. Yeah, now it's too tight. So I'm going to turn my barrel adjuster in. That's righty-tighty, and that loosens the cable just a little bit. And there you go. Oh, see how it's a little tight yet? Wants to jump up. So give it a turn. All right, going all the way back down. Oop, cable super loose. All right, we may be in over our heads a little bit here, folks. Let's see, we may have to replace this cable. There may be too much rust in the system. It's not behaving well. And nothing looks bent. So, bear with me. I really thought this would just work, and it didn't. See? I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, I'm loosening the cable a little bit up by the shifter. Oh, now it's working pretty well. There we go, I think we got it. I think that we can turn the low limit in a little bit, so, you know, we get it in gear, and then we can still move that derailleur a little bit. It's pushing it into the spoke protector. So the low limit's the bottom one on this derailleur, and I'm just going to turn it like that much, just a smidge, quarter, half turn, something like that. And the front, I think we will let a little bit of cable out and then take up the slack with the barrel adjuster in on the shifter. Okay, so that was just a tiny bit. I loosened it back there. Oh, it looks like I thought I saw a bad tooth or something. Something's happening. Is that just a chain line thing? I think I'm tightening the cable a bit. Okay, the rear derailleur was making noise. The top pulley wheel is hitting the chain against the rear cog, the big cog, and that's the B adjustment screw, the B pivot, and so I'm just turning that in, and that brings the whole system out a little bit. That helps things shift. That really quieted things down too. Okay, so I'm still getting a weird chatter up front. Not exactly sure why. Okay, I got it. So it's done hopping around. It's not really rubbing. I don't know, I guess it was just a couple of bent teeth. Oh, now it's hopping around up here. Man, this is the most finickiest. Well, that's cross-chained, so we don't want to be doing that anyway. Okay, so that's fine. That's the most finickiest crank set I've ever seen. So we're gonna get this front wheel on, do the front brakes. So we're trying to lift straight up, put pressure straight up on this axle to get it in there straight. And I'm eyeballing up here. Just want to make sure the wheel is in its happy home. Got this all cleaned and lubed already, which is nice, so we don't have to futz with it. I'm gonna make a little adjustment to the springs. I'm gonna pull it over to the left here a little bit. Maybe run a little bit more tension there. I'm going to pull some attention off this side. Not much, just a little bit. This is by feel, a little bit at a time, until you find a good equilibrium. Every system's different. Okay, and that front hub feels fine. Check it in a few spots. Oh, but look at that. So the tire's on backwards. Now, the wheel wasn't put on right in the first place. So we're going to take it off. The tire's pointing in the wrong direction. Now somebody either put the tire on the wrong way or somebody flipped the skewer around at some point. So I'm gonna flip the skewer around because that's the easiest thing to do. And then redo everything that I just did. Just to get that tire pointing forward. So tire treads usually have something that resembles an arrow that gives you an indication of a direction. It's not a real critical thing, but it's kind of what I go by. So you can see this tire tread looks like it's pointing forward now. Okay, just gonna double check, make sure I got everything in there properly. Skewer feels good. Then you got to re-center your brake because the dropouts are probably imperfect and the wheel might not be perfectly dished or something, but that is just fine. Then take your 5mm and kind of check some bolts. Derailleur, the hanger. These are 5mm and the bottle screws. I'd replace these bottle screws. They're pretty rusty if it was one of my used bikes. I'd replace a lot of stuff on this bike if it was one of my used ones. I would be taking that hub apart, I think, trying to make some improvements on it because the wheel's good. Checking the headset. Headset's a little loose, so we can loosen up the stem bolts here and then tighten the cap and then feel it. Okay, this wants some lube. So like the hubs on this bike, it's not necessarily worth taking everything apart. So we put some Phil's Tenacious Oil in there, work things back and forth, let gravity do its thing. We'll be over here a smidge and let gravity do its thing this way. Give it a little better angle. Yeah, we're working right in there. Right here we've got some lube and then likewise up here in the top we'll just let gravity pull it in, and then when we flip the bike over it'll work its way down on the top bearings. So here I got it kind of still at an angle and just letting gravity pull it in and work its way down there. So line things up. I'm going to tighten this back down, back it off a smidge. I can feel that. It's a lot better. A little tight. Look at that. Very nice. Good and tight. We already sprayed pretty much everything with one step before, so I don't have to drop lube in all the little bolts. So I think we're pretty good. Well, okay, bike farmers. That's it for this one. The Trek 4500 Alpha. It's all tuned up. It's got its new saddle. What did we all do? Oh, we need a kickstand. Well, I'll put a kickstand on later. You don't need to see that. New saddle, new chain, full tune-up. Well, basic tune-up. Matter of semantics. Sprayed out these shifter pods and they woke right back up. All these cables are fine. A little bit of futzing around with this front crank. Those chain rings are, I don't know, something was a little bit off. But I got it sorted out, and this bike is gonna have a nice second life for its owner. So thanks again for tuning in. I really, really appreciate it. If you liked this and you made it this far, I assume you want to see more. So click that notification bell, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and give this a thumbs up or 4. Send some comments. Let me know. What did I miss? How did I do it wrong? What do you think about fill oil as a cheater method? Just let me know, because I've learned a few things already. I've only been doing this a few months, and people are piping up with some really valid opinions. I like it. So engage. Let's. We've got people read the comments, so they're going to learn too, and we can all, come together on this thing and fix up and rescue a whole bunch of old bikes and get them back out there and under some butts. And maybe they're our own, maybe they're our friends, maybe they're our customers. Who knows? But more butts on bikes is generally a good thing. So thanks again, bike farmers. I will see you next time.